Hello, my name is Stephen Jones, Superintendent at Little Falls Community Schools. Welcome to Focus on Education for November 14th, 2014. Well, over the last 3 months, we've spent an awful lot of time taking a look at facilities in the district. We've hosted 5 public meetings as well as our first open steering committee meeting as well. And so what we've had the opportunity to do is to begin to take that comprehensive look at the facilities of the Little Falls Community Schools District. 5 buildings, plus the CEC, as well as community services, adds up to an awful lot of square footage that we're responsible for. And as with any program, there are always some concerns about how far are our facilities going to be able to take us, what kind of shape are we actually in, what are some of the needs awaiting the district as we move forward with education in the 21st century. So what we're going to do today on Focus of Education is actually take a look at a PowerPoint that we've put together to see, to show, to demonstrate some of the needs that are out there for the facilities of Little Falls Community Schools. So let's go with our first slide as we begin that process here in our little view at the Little Falls Community Schools facilities. This is kind of a sobering screen. I want you to take a hard look at the facilities' ages. We list our 5 main buildings, the high school, middle school, Lindbergh Elementary, Lincoln Elementary, and Dr. S.G. Knight. As you glance down and look at the construction date of these buildings, you'll notice that the high school, which is still referred to by some as the new high school, is our youngest building. It's 42 years old. Take a look at Lindbergh Elementary, the main section of Lindbergh Elementary, constructed in 1950. That building is 64 years old. So all 5 of our main school buildings are between 42 and 64 years old. The good thing is the buildings are structurally sound. Contegrity Incorporated, a construction management firm located here in Little Falls, says that very thing, that our school facilities, the buildings themselves, the core pieces of the buildings are in very, very good shape. But what are the needs? What are the needs as we begin to take a look at the facilities of Little Falls Community Schools? Let's start with the high school. The high school, as I said, is the youngest building, built in 1972. Makes it 42 years old. I'm 55 years old, and I know I need some replacements. I need some work done on me. I know also that the high school needs some work done as well. Certainly some of this work has already been looked at, especially in the maintenance areas, the roofs, the windows, the door replacements. Some has already been done. Some, unfortunately, has not been done. So as we talk about major replacements at the high school, we begin with those huge maintenance issues. The roof, many of our windows, doors, many of our doorknobs are not ADA compliant. ADA is the American Disabilities Act, which says that you cannot have screw turn handle doors, but you have to have latches that go up and down. Our HVAC, our heating ventilation systems, our rooftop units are themselves the originals, 42 years old. So I want you to think for a minute about your home heating units. My guess is that they're younger than 42 years old and that they're a lot smaller, a lot more efficient than what our current usage is here at the high school. Certainly those are some concerns. There is no ventilation. If you've been to one of our homecoming events or our graduation ceremonies in the gymnasium, you'll know that there is no dehumidification or cooling that goes in that gymnasium. Graduation in May and June sometimes is a very hot event in the gymnasium. Bleacher replacements. We are looking at the original 1972 bleachers. If you've come to some of our basketball games or volleyball matches in the gymnasium, we need some work done on those bleachers as well. If you've come to our plays, our concerts, our musicals, you'll sit in the auditorium, a very nice auditorium that unfortunately needs some lighting and sound updates as well. All throughout the high school, there are academic space needs that need to be looked at. 1972 again that this place was built. Certainly there are some updates that can be done in some of our academic areas. And lastly, some exterior improvements that can be used here at the high school. That's just a brief overview of the high school. Let me take a minute to talk about where these issues came up from. The district in the past 10 years has done a couple of studies. In 2004, GLT Architects out of St. Cloud put together district analysis look. And then again in 2008, Johnson Control did the same thing. All of these items were listed in those reports as areas that need some attention here in the district. I wanted to show you a couple of pictures. This is that behemoth, one of the old HVAC roof units. I can tell you now that the newer units are about 200% less size than this and a lot easier to replace. One other piece about these rooftop units, because they are 42 years old, spare parts are almost, if not, impossible to find. As we look at some other pictures, this is some of our decaying rooftop exterior structures. You notice that certainly some cement concrete has broken away. This is the tennis court structure, which right now is completely unusable. If you've driven by there the last 2 winters, you know that there's been a hockey rink on there. That is because the playing surface itself is decayed to the point where we can't have children on the court to use it as a tennis court. These are some of the windows that, original 1972 windows that could use some replacement. These are the bleachers I talk about in the high school that are really not even compliant in terms of safety, health and safety recommendations anymore. This comes from the science wing. Again, a 42-year-old wing or some desks that really need to have some work done. And then some of our structure, our infrastructure outdoors that is starting to crack and fray away. Let's take a look at the middle school. The middle school is actually in a little better shape in terms of replacement because of a project that was done there 3 years ago. Basically, the roofs over the commons and the swimming pool were replaced. So the roof replacement we talk about there is the rest of the building, not the commons and the swimming pool roof. We did do some window replacement there as well as some HVAC updates. So there has been work done as part of a project at Little Falls Community Middle School, but there are still some needs. Certainly roof and window replacements need to be done, although not throughout the entire course of the building. There are, however, some interior exterior door replacements, again with the handles, that need to bring them into ADA compliance. The gymnasium, the original bleachers from the 1960s are still in that gymnasium. Again, that's certainly an area that we need to get updated for safety purposes. The gymnasium as well as the shop area need ventilation and dehumidification. They are the original 1960s ventilation and dehumidification systems. You think about a shop area from the 1960s to the 2010s, very different. However, we're still using the same ventilation system down there. It needs some work. The locker rooms are the originals from the 60s. Showers don't work. Piping, the plumbing needs to certainly be replaced. We can't even use the locker room showers in the locker rooms at the middle school. If you've been to the middle school, you'll walk in and notice a beautiful courtyard that sits empty because the fire marshal will not allow us to use it. We do not have enough exits and entrances into the courtyard to use. We want to make that a usable space. So again, we're taking a look at that courtyard space. What else can we do? And then again, some exterior work that needs to be done in terms of some sidewalks and exterior replacements at the Little Falls Community Middle School. All in all, not bad. However, this is a rooftop unit. Again, one of those older behemoth dinosaur type units, which is not very efficient and can certainly be upgraded to help our heating and cooling system at the middle school. In addition, roofs, as I mentioned, the commons and the swimming pool roof are in great shape. They've been just replaced within the last couple of years. However, the other roof pieces of the middle school are between 20 and 25 years old. What you're seeing here is lining that is pulling away from the structure, causing leaking. These are some of the original lockers, 1960s lockers in the locker rooms. Also, the bleachers, the originals in the middle school. And then lastly, some of the exterior work that could be done. You can see actually space and shadows underneath the flashing. Moisture gets up under there, gets under the roof, and of course causes the leaking. When it does rain heavily at the middle school or during the snow melt season, we do have various areas in the middle school where buckets will be in the hallways to capture some of that water. We do repair those as they come up, but trying to repair a 20 to 25-year-old roof is kind of like sticking your finger in the dam. Let's move on to Lindbergh. Lindbergh, as you know, had some work done in 1993. That was the last major construction project done in the district, besides the one I mentioned earlier that encompassed some work at Lindbergh at the middle school and Lincoln. But Lindbergh really needs some work. Certainly some roof, although it's not as bad as some of our other districts, or other schools, excuse me. There are some roofs that need to be replaced, mainly over the 1950s section of Lindbergh. That's the same as it is with the windows and the exterior doors. There'll be some pictures here, which I'll show you in a few moments, that'll highlight that even better than I can describe it. One of the bigger issues at Lindbergh is the heating, ventilation, and air conditioning. There is none, really, in terms of air conditioning and dehumidification. We do have heat, which we're happy for. However, if you've been in Lindbergh, which is our largest elementary school right now with over 600 elementary students in it, if you've been in there during the months of April, May, June, August, September, it is a very tough place to be. Very humid, very hot, not enough fresh air coming in, simply because we don't have any air conditioning or dehumidification in there. Very difficult place for students to be and for adults to be. So that is a major upgrade that needs to be done at Lindbergh Elementary. There is some flooring that needs to be replaced, some interior work that could be done. Certainly some minor exterior work. There's not a lot that needs to be done at Lindbergh, but there is some. One of our bigger needs is in the gymnasium, which also serves as the cafeteria. As you may know, we've actually doubled this year the elementary physical education programs, and what that has done at Lindbergh is kind of caused some space concerns. Because the gymnasium doubles as the cafeteria, for 2.5 hours a day, we basically can only use one half of the gymnasium because the other half is being served as the cafeteria. And trying to double physical education time has really caused some space concerns there. So maybe this is an opportunity to take a look at finding space for a cafeteria, a separate cafeteria, which could really help Lindbergh Elementary. Here are a few of those pictures I referred to. These are some of the old doors and doorknobs that still exist in the 1950s section of Lindbergh Elementary. You can notice the glass, even though it's tempered, still a concern with the older style door and doorknobs. As I talked about roof issues, you can see the black tarp actually pulling away from the structure, and this is where your leaking begins. That black in the summertime with the heat heats up and cools down at nights. It expands and contracts, and that's where your rips and your tears appear. As you can see here, you can actually see where this one was fixed at one time, but again, starting to pull away from the structure. These are some of the old windows that we're referring to. The upper parts are the original 1950s. The lower parts were replaced, I believe, in the 70s. But again, you can imagine how inefficient those windows are that are now 64 years old. And here's a longer view of that 1950s section at Lindbergh. Well, we've looked at 3 of our schools. We've taken a look at the high school, the middle school, and Lindbergh Elementary. Let's move over to the west side and talk about Lincoln Elementary here in Little Falls. And Lincoln really was the site that received the most attention back in 2010 with the latest project that was done. It was a health and safety project that we qualified for. And through that, we were able to take care of an awful lot of work at Lincoln. So of our 5 buildings, Lincoln Elementary really has the least amount of work that needs to be done to it. However, that health and safety project did not take care of everything. You'll notice for the first time that there's no roof work to be done. That's because that was a big feature of that $10 million project, nearly $10 million project that was done in 2010. However, there are still some interior and exterior door replacements. Again, the handles, getting them ADA compliant. There's some entrance work. We are not fully handicapped accessible in terms of wheelchairs to get into Lincoln Elementary. There's gymnasium work. You'll see some pictures of that in just a little bit. Some minor flooring. As with all of our buildings that were built from 1950 through 1972, there is asbestos tiles and sometimes ceiling tiles. And the rule with asbestos is you don't have to take it out unless it's compromised. So in other words, if you're doing work, then you take it out, or if it becomes brittle, or if it becomes chipped, then that asbestos tile or ceiling tiles need to come out. And so as we go through and do work, We are taking out the asbestos that's there. But unless I said as it's compromised, we don't need to take it out. There is some exterior work that can be done, or excuse me, interior classroom work that can be done at Lincoln Elementary. Certainly the age of the building dictates that. Lincoln Elementary was built in 1965. One of the areas that does need some attention at Lincoln Elementary is the exterior work. There's quite a bit of concrete and cement work that needs to be done at Lincoln Elementary. Things are cracking and chipping away. And just like as we did at the middle school, there is a courtyard at Lincoln Elementary that is not being used. With the technology that's abundant in Little Falls Community Schools right now, sure would be nice to turn that into an outdoor space, an outdoor learning space, even one that could take advantage of technology so kids could go outside, get the fresh air, and learn as they do so. Here's a few pictures from Lincoln Elementary. This is some of that exterior work that I'm talking about. This isn't so bad, but you'll see some of it really gets cracky and really ultimately will become a health hazard. As you can imagine, as the moisture in the snow gets in those cracks, they expand, they chip, and ultimately they create little caverns and holes. And for safety purposes, we really need to take a look at this. This is the front entrance to Lincoln Elementary. Again, not wheelchair accessible, so we need to create ADA compliance here and create some ramps for that. Here's some of the flooring that is starting to pull away and could really use some attention at Lincoln Elementary. And this is the gymnasium at Lincoln. You'll notice those lights are not the best. When kids are throwing balls in a gymnasium, they end up becoming targets instead of lighting accessories. And that's what happens at Lincoln Elementary. This is that beautiful courtyard I was talking about. And I know the teachers would really love to see this used as an academic space. Let's move a little north and head up to Randall, to Dr. S.G. Knight Elementary, one of our 5 schools, a very valuable asset to us, and I think that's a key word that we talk about as we explore our facilities, because our goal is to maximize the assets that we have in our district in terms of our facilities. As I mentioned in the opener, none of our facilities are to the point where we feel that we cannot continue to use them. So we are not talking about building new schools. We're talking about taking the schools that we have and upgrading them, taking care of the maintenance issues, and we'll talk about security in a minute as well, but certainly making them schools that will show their age gracefully and continue to be key pieces of the asset structure here at Little Falls Community Schools. Dr. S.G. Knight certainly has some concerns. Like many of our schools, windows and interior door replacements need some work. However, again, you don't see roofs here because the roofs at Dr. S.G. Knight are really in good shape. HVAC is an issue again at Dr. Knight. Just like at Lindbergh, there certainly is not enough condensation removal. There's not enough dehumidification going on at Dr. S.G. Knight to make it a truly healthy school. We're not bringing in enough fresh air, to be quite honest with you, for the amount of people that we have in the building. So we need to do some things. We certainly need to take a look at site drainage. Those of you familiar with Dr. S.G. Knight know that it was built on a very wet area. We have water that sometimes stands outside, but certainly flows underneath the building through a tunnel system that we have there that was not meant for water to be in it, but the water finds its way there. So we need to certainly take a hard look at the site drainage pieces at Dr. S.G. Knight. We also need to look at fire protection. We were written up by the fire marshal for not having some sufficient fire protection there. We are trying to address that through a facilities project here with Little Falls Community Schools. Certainly classroom interior remodels for a school that was built in 1959. That's as old as I am. I was born in 1959. Dr. S.G. Knight is 55 years old and certainly could use some look at some remodeling inside the classrooms at Dr. S.G. Knight. The exterior piece, the aesthetic piece at Dr. S.G. Knight also needs some attention. This is the tunnel section I was talking to you about. This concrete is not supposed to be wet. It's not supposed to be moist. And you can tell that it's happened quite a few times. And here's a longer look at it. You can see that those are consistent stains. And so water is flowing through here frequently. This is the gymnasium piece at Dr. S.G. Knight. This is one of the classrooms. Again, you can tell in 1959's furniture right here, we really could take a look at upgrading some of the pieces of furniture there as well as the aesthetics at Dr. Knight. This is the front entrance walking right into the building. We sure would like to make that look a little nicer and welcoming, more welcoming for our families. Here we see grass growing where grass shouldn't be growing, on the playground and in the parking lot, up at our school in Randall, Dr. S.G. Knight. And here, I talked to you about water. The day we went and took these shots this fall, just happened to see water standing out front. Again, in a ditch where we really don't want water standing in a school. So we've talked about our 5 schools, the high school, middle school, Lindbergh Elementary, Lincoln Elementary, and Dr. S.G. Knight Elementary. Let's talk a little bit about the district facilities. And again, I want to remind folks that all those things you saw so far were all identified in 2004 and 2008. These are not new identifications. These are things that have been identified as needs before in this district. All we're doing in 2014 and 15 is bringing them forward again and deciding if this is the time to really take a look at it, to take a look at addressing these things. But there are some other district facilities that I think we need to look at as well. And again, most of these were addressed during 2008. Track replacement. If you've been to football games, you'll sit up in the bleachers and you look down the track and you say, geez, that really looks nice. That is really a nice looking track. And a lot of people have said that. And then I've asked them to go down and walk the track, and they can't believe the difference. Once you get down on the track, you see how delicate a balance we are right now between losing that track and finding a track that we can actually use. We'll show some pictures here in a moment that'll really exemplify that. Our track needs work, or we're going to lose it. The irrigation system that waters our grounds, again, was installed in the 70s. One of 2 active irrigation systems like it in the state of Minnesota, and parts are next to impossible to find. According to our grounds crew, they spend an average of about a day and a half a week in the summertime trying to jerry-rig parts to get them to work to keep our irrigation system going. One of the pieces that came up in 2008 was, do we have enough gymnasium space? If you think about when the high school was built in 1972, it was before Title IX. I want you to think about that. It was before Title IX, before there were girls' athletics in Little Falls Community Schools. We have not added any gymnasium space. In fact, I've been told, and people have said it over and over again, we've actually lost gymnasium space when they tore down the central office building downtown, down by where the fire hall is in downtown Little Falls. So we've actually lost gym space as we've doubled, in a sense, the need for it by adding Title IX girls' athletics. So is now the time to take a look at a gymnasium addition and maybe look at it as a combination community center, which I think Little Falls, a lot of people think, Little Falls needs, and a combination community center and field house. Would it be a facility that would have gymnasium space that could be used during the day by the school for classroom space and extracurricular space, but then by the community in the evenings and on the weekends? Should it have meeting spaces? Should it have a commercial kitchen? Should that be where our community center, our community recreation is centered, instead of out at the current space north of town? Should community services be held out of the high school, where maybe a facility like this could be built? In addition, there's been conversation about baseball fields. The city and school have talked in the past, do we need additional baseball fields? That's certainly been a community-oriented drive that has started many times and failed many times. In addition, there's been some conversation recently about early childhood. Should early childhood have its own standalone site, or have a wing of a building specifically devoted to ECFE instead of trying to fit those ECFE classes into Lincoln Elementary and Lindbergh Elementary? And lastly, because our CEC, our Alternative Learning Center, is currently housed at St. Francis, and of which the district pays about $70,000 a year in rent, should the district look at having our CEC located in its own building? So theoretically, could the CEC move out to community services and be located in that building out there? These are all questions that are kind of floating around, wondering if these are possibilities. As I said, I showed you some pictures of the track. Again, grass growing where grass should not be growing in the middle of a track. Here's lane number 1 on that track, and you can see the exterior coating starting to fray away. People do not want to run in lane 1. And again, here, you'll see some of that same type of of information. And lastly, I'll take a look at our irrigation system. As you see, in fact, that it is the original irrigation system from 1972. So what are the next steps? Well, a lot of these steps have already happened. An RFP for architectural services has been submitted. And in fact, TSP Architects out of Marshall, Minnesota has been hired. We've had our first additional public meeting on November 6th. The second one is coming up on November 20th, with 2 more scheduled in December and 2 more scheduled in January. We want people to come. We want people to come to these meetings. They're at 6:30 in the evening. November 20th is our next one at the high school commons. We met on the 6th and had about 55 or 60 people. We're hoping that close to 100 people will come to our next one. These are steering committee meetings where our people, the people who show up at these meetings from the communities, will drive this process. And I want people to know that. If you come and you want to be a part of the steering committee meetings to help this process move forward, all you need to do is come to the meetings, voice your thoughts, listen to the information being shared, but ultimately, this needs to be a community-based process if we're moving forward and intend to be successful. But ultimately, these are your buildings. These are the buildings of the community, and that's the way that we want it to be. I hope that today has been valuable for you. I hope that you've sat back and taken in some information, but at the same time, I hope you've written down some questions. I hope you'll take the opportunity to come to our series of meetings. They'll all be publicized. We'll have a link set up on our webpage that'll be specifically designated to the Little Falls Community Schools project, facilities project. And before we close, I need to talk about one area that I haven't mentioned yet. And you might have noticed that it was missing because it wasn't talked about in 2008, and it has to do with security. All of our buildings have huge security needs right now. So if you talk about some of the issues that are happening nationwide with security, quite frankly, buildings that were built in the 50s, 60s, and 70s did not address them, nor were they intended to address them. Security as it is today in 2014 was non-existent in the 1970s and 60s and 50s. So that's another thing for you to ponder as a community member of Little Falls. How important is it to me, to us, to our students, to our communities, that the security of Little Falls Community Schools, all of our buildings, be up to date, be brought up to where it needs to be as events in our country have dictated. If you go to a school that's been built or remodeled within the last 5 to 10 years, they look vastly different than Little Falls Community Schools looks right now. And so that's the question. And these are the types of issues that we're dealing with at the steering committee level for you to bring input. As I wrap this up, again, I'll mention our next steering committee meeting is set for Thursday, November 20th at 6:30 at the high school commons. If you can't make Thursday, November 20th, the next one is December 8th. Then it's December 22nd, both at 6:30 in the evening at the high school commons. If you can't make any of those and you still have interest, please contact me. My office door is always open. I'd love to visit with you on the phone. My office phone number is 632-2001, or you can connect with me through email. My Little Falls email account is pretty simple, sjones@lfalls.k12.mn.us. I hope this has garnered some interest, intrigued you a little bit, has brought some questions to your mind that demand some answers, but ultimately I hope you're interested, hope you're intrigued by it all, and I hope that you become a part of the solution here at Little Falls Community Schools. This has been the November 14th, 2014 session of Focus on Education. I want to thank you for attending. Good evening.